I'm Derri, and I've read it before. I'm back, and sorry for the delay. I had an unexpected unit move within my building, so I have been busy rearranging and moving and cleaning and doing all of that kind of thing. So apologies for that. But I'm back to talk about the last book in the Death sub-series. That book is The Thief of Time, and it's my personal favourite of the Death books. In this one, we have a catastrophe about to occur in time. A young clockmaker is about to build the world's most efficient clock. It's going to be the most accurate. It's going to have the smallest unit of time possible. And all unknowingly, in doing so, would trap time, and in so doing, stop everything. Everything will literally just come to a grinding halt, and the people behind funding this for this young clockmaker are the Auditors. So we see the return of Death's antagonists, and we see them cheating because they're not supposed to directly intervene. So Death can see that this catastrophe is coming, in that he doesn't have any work after that time that this clock becomes active. So he ropes Susan in as usual because he can't get involved and Susan can. Death, meanwhile, because he knows there's this catastrophe about to happen, he's off trying to find the other 3 members of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse to tell them that, well, we have to ride out. There's an apocalypse coming. And all of the entertaining conversations that includes. That's what Death's up to. It's not a particularly large part of the story. Susan is trying to figure out who this young clockmaker might be, and can she get there in time to stop it. The other people who have figured out what's going on are the monks of history. And if Death is the first sub-series that you've read of the Discworld, this will be your first encounter with them. Now, the history monks are perhaps the cleverest inclusion in Sir Terry's series, because in reading this particular book and getting their history, he's created an element that smooths out all of the things about timelines and inaccuracies and character differences from the early books into the later books beautifully. It's the perfect meta reasoning for why everything has changed. And he uses them sparingly, but they do show up in quite a few of the later books. And their most effective field agent is Lutze, who is also known as the Sweeper. Lutze is not officially a member of the monks of history, but he's been there a few centuries and he's picked up a lot of stuff. But he is outside the hierarchy, and this comes in handy, not least because at the moment they have an apprentice who is driving all of the teachers bonkers, because they're trying to teach him the ways of splitting time and moving time and manipulating time, and he's not paying attention, he's not listening, and he knows it all already and can answer questions that he shouldn't know the answers to, and they're really annoyed. They don't want to teach this know-it-all kid. He's really annoying them. So they wash their hands of him and they make him an apprentice of Lutze. All well and good. This young man with his innate grasp of time, they have twigged something's going on and follow that sense to its source. And then we all come together at the point where the clockmaker is very, very close to starting his clock. The clockmaker is a young man by the name of Jeremy Clarkson, not to be confused with the TV show host of a car show. Jeremy Clarkson is very organised, he's very controlled, and he is medicated. But he's a genius with time. He can keep time in a mechanism like nobody else. He is so far above the rest of his field that his genius makes a lot of allowances for him. The guild makes sure he's well stocked with his medicine. They come and check on him all the time, make sure he's okay. So now we have an auditor, which seems like an oxymoron because auditors aren't individuals. In this instance, one of them is, because they have to interact with this young man to make the clock. So they create a human body and an auditor entity enters the body. So now there is an auditor having an existential crisis because they've never been an individual before. And this shifts something quite fundamental for the auditor, and it's convinced it's going insane. It thinks it is properly insane, and oddly becomes quite attached to being separate and alive, so is kind of secretly hoping that it doesn't go quite so smoothly. So we've got that happening. So now we have an auditor funding Jeremy Clarkson. He now has all of the materials he could ever have dreamed of using to make this most accurate clock. And they've given him an Igor. Now an Igor, this may actually be your first introduction to Igors actually in the Death series, now I think of it. And Igors are typically Igorish. They're generally made up of inherited body parts. This particular Igor have his grandfather's hands. They all lisp, that's part of being an Igor. And he literally has his grandfather's hands. They're often covered in lots of scars, very uneven. So when an Igor is concerned about their master's mental health, you should probably start putting things away tidily and maybe going on holiday. Susan knows that something's not right. The history monks are on their way knowing something's not right. And it all comes to a head in a very delightful, and I say this quite clearly, a delightful battle. And I just love it. I love The Thief of Time. I think it's brilliant. I think the humour in it is absolutely on point. I think the way that the plot lines all intersect is genius. I think the creation of the monks of history is just inspired. And the humour in the Horsemen of the Apocalypse as people who have, well, anthropomorphic personifications who have been around for a long time now, and what they've seen and what they do and what they're still doing and how their jobs have evolved is genius. This is one of the books in Discworld that really highlight just how clever Sir Terry is with language and words and mindsets and the way things change, and how sometimes those changes are for the better and sometimes they're just for the sake of changing. And those are just so much fun to read. Some of the language puns in this are they're just chef's kiss. They are just, and I have to leave them to you to find, because if I tell you, it loses the funny. If I explain it to you, you don't get the joy of finding them. And that is the joy of reading a Terry Pratchett, is finding the joke, seeing the pun, getting that reference. And you don't always catch them all. And I know this because I've read them before, and I've read them many times, and I still catch new ones. I will still read a sentence and for the first time recognise that that was a really clever play on words. There are that many layers of humour in his books that I can't speak highly enough about them. I really can't. But anyway, that brings me to the end of The Thief of Time and the Death sub-series. I will probably do the Guards sub-series next. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to like and subscribe and comment. Did you start with the Death series? Or is it one you've left? Is it one you'll come to later? Let me know. And if you've already read the Death series, which one did you like the best? And if you haven't read Death series, get started on that because they're really good. I'm going to love you and leave you. Have a great week.